You've sat quietly, biting your tongue. You've forgiven, hoping things would change. You told yourself you were being strong, that patience was a virtue, even though inside you burned with questions. Why didn't they care? Why do I feel hollow? This is not about revenge. It's about discovering you cannot pour from an empty cup. It's about drawing a line, not because you hate them, but because you must protect what's inside you. In the next few minutes, I want you to feel a shift, a moment when you stop waiting for someone else to do the right thing and start doing what's right for you. Because mercy without consequence doesn't heal, it destroys. 1. The cost of silent tolerance. You know this moment. They humiliate you. They lie. They betray. And then they grin as though nothing happened. Your silence becomes their license. You tell yourself you stayed strong, being the bigger person, giving the benefit of the doubt. But what if I told you that staying silent is giving them power, not showing strength? Strength is owning your response. It is knowing that kindness isn't always soft. Sometimes kindness is steel covered in velvet. It protects and holds nothing that harms you inside. When you allow lies and betrayal to go unchecked, you begin to erase the boundary between what is acceptable and what isn't. The danger isn't in the action itself. Over time, any act of betrayal becomes normalized. The tolerance of one wrong signals the acceptance of many. 2. Forgiveness versus reconnection. They're not the same. Many spiritual and self-help teachings tell us, forgive and you'll heal. This is partly true. Forgiveness can ease personal resentment, reduce anxiety, free emotional space. But forgive does not necessarily mean reconnect. If someone says sorry only when discovered or only after causing harm, that apology may be about saving their image, not about genuine remorse. A remorseful person doesn't argue with your silence or pressure your healing. They don't treat your boundary as an inconvenience. In my experience, and this is something Stoic philosophy underscores, you can forgive someone internally, but still decide that you cannot trust them or allow them back into your life on previous terms. One insight: when you seek reconnection without seeing true change in behavior, you often betray yourself more than the other person. You give them the space to hurt you again. 3. Boundaries. The architecture of self-respect. Boundaries are messy. They're confusing. They make others uncomfortable. But boundaries are necessary. Imagine a home with no walls. People wander in, sift through your things, take liberties. Your home would cease to be yours. That's what happens when relationships lack boundaries. You're not in your life. You might as well be a guest in your own existence. Perhaps you've avoided confrontation because you were taught that saying no makes you bad, unloving, or selfish. Many of us carry this belief since childhood. But here's the truth. Boundaries aren't cold. They're not rejection, they're protection. They're giving space for relationships to be real, honest, and mutual rather than one-sided. Here are some boundary examples. If you disrespect me in front of others, this ends this interaction. If you keep repeating the same hurtful behavior, I will remove myself. I will not apologize for how I feel when you disrespect me. These aren't tests. They are honest contracts you make with yourself about what you will accept. 4. Patterns versus isolated incidents. One betrayal doesn't make someone a monster, but when the same betrayal comes again from the same person with the same justification, the pattern becomes a story. We often excuse damage by saying, they're stressed, they had a bad day, or they didn't mean it. But look at the data. How many times has this happened? Has something improved? Patterns are truth. The Stoic discipline of perception teaches observing objectively what has actually happened repeatedly, rather than what we hope or believe is happening. When you spot that pattern, your decisions become clearer, not rash, but rooted in evidence. 5. Why consequences aren't cruel. They're necessary. At this stage, many ask, but isn't consequence harsh? Isn't it cold? It may feel harsh, but sometimes the most loving thing you do, for yourself and for them, is to enforce consequences. Think of consequences as gravitational pull. Things must settle. If someone's behavior keeps crossing lines and you do nothing, the imbalance grows. You fill more space with apologies, explanations, gentle corrections. They feel no urgency to change because there is no cost to their choices. Implementing consequences has multiple purposes. It protects your own mental and emotional health. It forces clarity. You see who respects you and who only wants access. It gives others, if they choose to see their reflection, to reckon with their behavior. Consequences aren't about punishment, they're about boundaries acting in truth. 6. The real danger of overforgiving. When we forgive too quickly out of guilt or fear of being seen as unloving, we often cover over the pain rather than process it. We absorb damage like an overused sponge. Eventually, we leak. We get sick. We lose sleep. We shrink ourselves so that others can live comfortably around our edges. Also, we inadvertently encourage harm. When someone knows that apology erases everything, they never have to change. Words become a reset button. Patterns repeat. The behavior persists. The wound deepens. 7. Choosing yourself. The courageous act. Enforcing consequences requires courage. Saying, "I need distance," or "I will no longer accept X behavior," often elicits discomfort for them, for you, for relationships. You might be called dramatic, cold, unforgiving, but those labels are cheap. They are designed to make you second guess your ground, to pull you back into chaos disguised as peace. You should ask, is staying in a harmful dynamic worth losing parts of yourself? Is that relationship preserving your dignity or eating it away? Choosing yourself means choosing peace over approval. It means walking with dignity, even if alone. It means you don't wait for apologies or understanding. You act from your center. 8. Action steps. How to begin enforcing consequences. To move from thought into life, you need practical steps. Here are some, drawn both from Stoic teachings and modern emotional health practices. Observe and journal. Note every time behavior crosses a line. Collect evidence of patterns. When things happen, write them. What was said, what you felt, what it reflects. Define non-negotiables. Identify the behaviors you will no longer tolerate. Define them clearly in your mind and, if needed, in words. Communicate clearly. Speak without blame, but with clarity. When you do X, I feel Y, so I will do Z. Example, when you lie to me, I lose trust. I need distance until transparency returns. Follow through. Once you set the boundary, you must act on it. If you don't, the boundary loses power and credibility. Be ready to feel guilt or fear. Those feelings are natural. They often indicate you're doing something significant. But allow them. Don't be ruled by them. Support yourself. Seek people who respect your growth. Read, reflect. Perhaps seek therapy or philosophical texts, Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus. 9. Personal reflections and philosophical context. As someone who has spent years trying to make everyone else comfortable, even at my expense, I've come to see that some of the cruelest harm is self-inflicted, allowing people to cross your boundary because you thought love demanded it. Stoics remind us you cannot control others. You can only control your judgments, your actions, your responses. That doesn't mean being passive. It means being intentional. Marcus Aurelius once urged us to seek what is true, even when truth is uncomfortable. Stoic philosophy doesn't glorify bitterness. It honors clarity. Clarity about where you stand, what you accept, who you allow in. Forgiveness without consequence is often a kind of self-deception. It plays the role of virtue while quietly undermining your dignity. 10. What happens if you don't enforce consequences? You continue to feel unseen. Because if someone knows you will never respond, they assume it's safe to keep hurting you. Your emotional reserves deplete. You may become passive, cynical, detached, not because you want to, but because you've been worn down. Toxic relationship dynamics perpetuate. Enabling becomes a cycle. You enable, they disappoint, you forgive, they repeat. You lose sight of yourself. Over time, you may forget what respect, mutual trust, and clear boundaries feel like. 11. What happens when you do enforce them? You regain a sense of agency. You begin to see yourself again, not as someone to be molded around others' needs or harms. Relationships shift. Some will adjust and grow. Some will leave. The painful truth is, those who leave probably never respected you as you deserve. Peace becomes internal, not just external. Silence without anxiety. Absence without longing. You stop waiting. You reclaim your worth. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You start living deliberately. Conclusion. Final thought. Here's what I want you to remember. You don't need their apology. You don't need their validation. You don't need perfect closure. You need your decision. From this moment on, let your peace be non-negotiable. You say enough. You enforce the consequence, not in anger, but in clarity. Not in vengeance, but in protection. Because when you stop giving access to people who don't deserve it, you rediscover who you are, quietly, strongly, unapologetically.